What's going on, everybody? This is the TheT-SaneOtaku here, and today we're here with, as you can see by the title, a HYAKKI deck profile. As you can see in my last video, I did talk about how the HYAKKI deck does indeed have the Kakashi sleeves, but I bet you didn't know that I did have a Kakashi mat to go with it. Now, it's true. I love my Kakashi. I love him a lot. Even though he's technically not my most favorite character in the show, I really enjoy him just being the cover of this deck in general. So let's go right into it. So for the first card, we have the starter, which is, you know, the handler. This came out in GBT 10, and so his ability is, you know, you choose a HYAKKI rear guard, and you put him, the starter, into the soul. When your Vanguard attacks, you put one of the reverses, you call it, and he gets plus 5k, and then at the end of turn, put a bomb in the deck. So this basically helps you a lot with how the deck functions. You'll go and see later as the deck goes on. I prefer to go first in this deck. The main reason for that is because most decks nowadays, if it's, you know, Luard or most of the other meta decks, they need GB. They can't do much before their first stride, so they always want to go second. So what you do is you beat them to the punch. You go and hit them really hard where it hurts, and you do it with this. So I mean, other than that, I don't really know of a good starter other than this. So I mean, if you're not running him, I don't know what you're doing. So the next card we have is, of course, none other than the main grade 3 of the deck, which is the HYAKKI Vola Reverse. So this is quite interesting old card. His ability is, you know, the limit. This is why you go first, and it is limit break 4. You choose 2 of your own rear guards and lock them, and then you choose 3 copies of him, and they get plus 10,000 power until end of turn. So he's of course the main grade 3 of the deck. Everything requires you to have this. As much as 3 may sound tedious, it is not actually that bad because of this card right here, which we'll be getting into next. It also is nice because of the fact of you're not going to want to go and have 4 damage when you get to this thing. So when you ride him, you're not going to be at 4 damage unless you're really getting hurt by some rush deck that has, like, you know, before GB abilities. But I'm gonna be showing you, like, later on why this is nice. Even though it's limit break 4, you can still get 4 attacks in that are at least 16k plus when they're at a grade 2. So that's very nice. So the next card is what you saw, is the HYAKKI Zora. Okay, so this is why having 3 of them isn't so bad, because deck, rearguard, continuous, this guy is this guy. So his second ability is also kind of weak. It's Soul Blast 2. When this unit is placed on the Vanguard circle, pay the cost. If you do, you go and find the good one, you ride it on top of this card as stand, you shuffle the deck, and you countercharge 1. So the reason why the countercharge is there is when you ride to this guy, his on-ride ability is Counterblast 2. You search your deck for a copy of him, you call it, and at the end of turn it goes to the bottom of the deck. So if you have to, I always recommend this one because Soul is nice to have in this deck, and you'll see with the late cards coming up later on. But you ride to this if you have to. You ride over him with this. His ability activates, which is on ride. So you counterblast, and then you would call the new unit, and then the rest of his ability goes on, which means you countercharge 1. So in the end, it makes you only counterblast of 1, but it makes you Soul Blast 2. And the deck likes to have its soul. I mean, there's plenty of ways to replenish it, as you'll see. Like, I never have problems with counterblast or soul in this deck. The only problem I have is having cards in hand. So I think that'll make more sense as we keep on going. So next up we got the triggers. So much to anyone's surprise, we're running 4 heals, but we're running the good heal. And its ability is really nice. It's when you go to this guy, or this gal I should say, if you go to the G Guardian, then you go and have the ability to put 1 normal unit back to your deck. And so when you G-Guard into the unflipping one, you want to grab one of these, or one of the other ones. You want to grab one of these, and you put them back to the deck, because that's really important. Because the more of those you have in the deck, the more that your strides, more that your card abilities, and the more options you have. Because once you start drawing them, I mean, like every other deck, you have less guard material, you have less cards to call, and you have more like of a gray area of what your deck can do. So 4 heals, I think that's pretty set, understanding. The next card we got is this guy right here. It is that Flame of Victory clone, but it is Stealth Beast Cat Devil. I've actually never read his ability before. I just knew what he did. So this is another reason why your soul just never runs out, because he helps you go and get some of your columns to magic numbers, especially with your units getting +3 and +4s. It really goes and stacks up and helps over time. I mean, also crits are nice to have in this deck, because if you're sitting there on like there's a few cards in here that let you get some multi-attacks in, and it really helps out if you go and get those crits. So when you do hit a stand trigger or something like that, or even if your Vanguard's just attacking, get that crit. To be honest, I don't know many decks that don't run crits nowadays. So this one might come to a surprise to some people, and I'll be showing you both at the same time. We're running 5 stands. I almost ran 6, but I found that 5 was a good number for consistency. If you want, you could switch out one of the next, which I'm pretty sure you know what it is. You can switch out one of these for a stand. I prefer this one, but I mean, it's not always the right one, because I believe it says choose a rear guard. Yes, choose one of your rear guards. And so that means you cannot choose your Vanguard with him. So that's very, like, I would prefer if he was able to go and choose your Vanguard. But I mean, it also helps you if you're just trying to get more cards on the field and stuff like that. So I guess it works out. Her ability is a Shadow Stitch ability, which is quite nice. It also is why you don't run out of cards in Soul or Counterblast. And it also gives +4. But you have to not hit, and it has to boost, which, to be honest, is not that bad. So the stands, nice. It also helps with your finisher. If you don't finish with that, and if you don't finish with your limit breaks, it's really difficult. So these help out quite a bit. I apologize, I have quite a cold coming on. And then last but not least, sorry, we have 3 draws. It's got no fancy ability. Draws draw. Just came out from GBT 10. So in this deck, draws are a blessing and a curse at the same time. So when you're going and getting your drive checks and stuff, if you go and get one of these, it can really hurt your game, because you could draw one of your HYAKKIs from the deck. That is true. But there's so many other cards you need to get. You can't search for them unless you activate an ability that searches specifically for it. But most of the time, you need a copy of it to get it going. So if you don't have a copy of, let's say, Lake Diver, you can't get more Lake Divers. And so that's why you run the draws. You try to go and get that one copy in your hand first, and then you work with it after that. And if you do draw the HYAKKI from it, you can pay for stride, or there's another stride that helps you along with using them to their fullest potential. So in my opinion, draws are actually not that bad. Next, to the grade 1s. 2 copies of the stride enabler for this is for Yasui, because there's no HYAKKI one. This deck likes to stride. You don't have to 100% every single time, but in my opinion, I would rather not discard my grade 3s. I'd rather call them and use an ability to put them to the bottom of the deck than have this where it's like paying it for me. Aside from that, I don't see really, like, most decks are stride decks nowadays. This is a nice hybrid, so that's nice. The next card we have is the HYAKKI, one of the cards from the HYAKKI support from GBT10. It is a, tap, retire itself, draw a card, and Soul Blast 1, tap itself, choose one of your grade 3 units, and it gets plus 5k. So this is really nice because it does what the draw triggers can do too. The only problem with this card is both of his skills require it to tap itself, and they're both at different phases. Like, his auto ability is tap at the end phase, you draw a card, but you have to retire him too. To be honest, I don't use this ability that much. That's why you're running him as a 2 of. He's a nice ride, first ride. But I mean, when you're later on in the game and you need to go and get more power for your units when you're in your finisher and you have a lot of soul built up due to your starter, due to other cards, what you do is smack them down, Soul Blast 1, tap them, and then you go and get the 5k somewhere, and then you just retire them for something new. Other than that, just nice utility. I don't recommend you run more than this. Less than this, you don't see it then, really. I mean, you can't search for him, you can't copy for him, so he's not the biggest thing in the world. So, the next card we have is a really nice card. You could even run this as a 4 of, and that is the copier of the deck. This one is why having Soul is nice. It is once a turn, counter +1, Soul Blast 1. You choose a unit in the same column as this unit. You call a card from your deck that has the same name, and then at the end of turn, it goes to the bottom of the deck. So basically, you can't copy it unless I read it wrong. No. So you have to choose someone other than itself, and that's really, I mean, like, if there's one in front of it like this, then you can copy itself, but I mean, I would think that would be pointless because you have 2. These are really nice to go and get your other cards on the field. For example, the next card we have, and I've talked about it a little bit, is Lake Diver. And then, you could search it to find these guys and get a lot of power for your HYAKKI units. It's just so nice trying to get those consistent calls out. It also helps with a way to get a grade 3s, which I'll get to with my grade 2s. I don't see this running as 3 of, just because of, I hate riding to it, because it's kind of but I would recommend just running it as a 3 or 2 of. I cannot see it run lower or higher, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, it's always a good card. Next is going to be a little bit of a shocker, but I found that this card really helps out, and that is 4 copies of Lake Diver. So what Lake Diver does is, when he's placed on the rear guard circle, and so when he's placed on rear guard circle, it can be from deck or anything like that. You go and counterblast 1, and you search your deck for 2 more copies. So basically, you call 1, and then you call 2 more. It really helps out getting your back row when you really just don't have cards in hand. If you're running a retire, if you're facing a retire deck, I mean, your rear guards aren't going to be staying, but I mean, there's always those times when you won't have that back row that you need, and 7k is not a bad booster. So for counterblast 1, you call 2, and then these 2 go away at the end of the turn, and so you just call the next one, and then you call another one from his ability, or maybe even you call the other one, so you have a nice half a board full of these things. So, I mean, they're quite a nice card for boosters. You can call them really easily. It's cheap cost. This is the one variable of the deck. It's this, or you're going to see I do not run PGs at all. It's, I just feel like this deck is more of a rush deck. You make it or break it. You go to first stride, second stride, maybe third stride. After third stride, if you haven't won by then, or if you haven't lost by then, you're going to lose. And the PGs make you want to make it last past that. I just cannot see it. I've tried this before. It just doesn't help out. So If you want to run PGs, you can change out Lake Diver for him, but I found that Lake Diver does a lot more work. And here we go. The card that makes this deck that wants you to go first. Limit Break Remover. This one's pretty self-explanatory. When you go and sit there, and you're on grade 3, and your opponent's on grade 2, you go and call this baby, and now you have a Limit Break enabled. So that means you can, now that Limit Break's enabled, you can pay her for the cost, so she's a lock target, and you can go and have your 3 units go and get the plus 10k. It is really good when you're going first, because you are 21,000, and that's at least 2 of them, because you can just call one due to your on-ride ability, and then let's say you have another one in hand. You got 3 units that are 21k, and then with your starter's ability, you got a 16k unit, opponent is a 9k, or if they get a defense trigger, 14k. They're either going to take a lot of damage, which to some decks may be like they're sitting there like, oh yeah, but most decks considerably like to be between 2 and 3 counterblasts before first stride, or by first stride. When you go and push them to 4, they get really flustered, and that's why this deck is really nice when it goes first. It hurts decks like Luard, where they go and sit there and you'll just bash in their rear guards, and let's say that they only have 1 card left on the field to go for the Luard stride ability, so they're only going to get 2 off of that, and then now before first stride, they got to go and play more cards from hand. They won't have as much cards in hand from, you know, cheaping out or getting rituals or their Belial Owls or something like that. So I could see you running this at a 3 of is a good number. The most you can go up to is 4. I would say nothing more, nothing less. So that's why that is. Next card we have is we start the grade 2s. Vanilla 10Ks. These guys I think are just pretty self-explanatory. The rush decks really don't like you, so you have to outrush them. But the 10k base does help you go and get away from those magical numbers. And he's just a good ride target overall, because all the other grade 2s are nice rear guard abilities. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Next card of the deck is why it's really nice to start your opening hand without a grade 3. That's 4 copies of this bad boy. So this is Stealth Dragon or Oboro Keeper, if you cannot see it that well. But his ability is basically when you have 2 of them on the rear guard circles, you at the end of your turn you put both of them back to deck and you grab your deck for a grade 3. So if you have an opening hand with no grade 3, but you have one of these guys in your hand, and let's say you have one of these guys in your hand, that's a really good hand, because all you have to hope for is either getting a second copy of him, or you go for that copy in grade 1. Because you just go and, oh, call it here, oh, bing, bing, boom, counterblast 1, soul blast 1, call another copy of this unit here, and at the end of the turn, these 2 go away. And then you get the grade 3. So it really isn't bad when you just don't have the cards, but I could see you running this less than 4 of. I could see you running it at 3 and then running your vanilla 10Ks at that, but I prefer it at 4 just for the consistent not having grade 3s in hand, because I prefer not having them in my opening hand. So the last card of the main deck is the amazing card that literally makes it to where it's so consistent and it's really nice, and that is this card right here. It is, you put him into the soul, and let's see, yeah, choose a card from your demo zone, put a bomb in the, yep. So he countercharges, he soul charges, and he puts normal units to the bottom of the deck if you just call a HYAKKI in the same row, not same column. Column seems dumb. So when you have your Vanguard here, let's say he's your Vanguard, let's say pretend he's a HYAKKI. So if you have your Vanguard here, you call him here. Oh, you call any HYAKKI, do an ability from hand or anything. Oh, sweet. Pop him to soul, countercharge, and then get another HYAKKI back to the deck. He is so good. And when he's attacking, if I have a HYAKKI Vanguard, plus 2k. This is one of those things where it's a 4 of staple. I better not see this in any deck. Like, oh, run it as a 3 of, There's like, the bad thing about HYAKKI is it's one of those excuse me. It's one of those archetypes that doesn't get as much love as the main archetype does, but it gets enough to where they get cards like this, where you must run this card as a 4 of. If you're not, I can't really help you. But that's all the main deck. So on to the G Zone. We're gonna start off with G Guardians. First up, you're running 2 copies of the Unflipper. The Unflipper is really, really, really good. So its ability is Counterblast 1, G Flip, and it gets plus 10k at the end of the everything. But it gets an ability to the Vanguard, which is any units you guard with, when they go to the drop zone from the Guardian Circle, you put them to the bottom of the deck instead. This is really nice when you go, let's say, they attack with the Vanguard first, or they attack with a really beefy rearguard first, you G-guard into her, and then your Vanguard gets the ability where any card you just put in, you just go to the bottom of the deck. So you can go and smack in triggers, stand triggers, any card, grade 3s, and you're having a fun time. So this is another really easy way to get HYAKKIs back to the deck. So running it as this is not bad. I could see you running it as more, but it's kind of hard because just how G Guardians work. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So next up we have 2 copies of her. So basically what she does is she's the one where you choose, you move, and the moved unit gets plus 5. So the only problem with her is you lose out in cards on your field, and you have to have a field for it. And then you need to go and search your deck for, it says 2. Search your deck for up to 1 card with the same name. Okay. So you guard with it, and then you move a unit in, and then you call a unit from deck to the Guardian Circle, and it gets plus 5 shield. What's nice about that is it gets a good shield, gets a very big shield. The problem with it is you're losing cards in deck that you can search to copy. So if you go and, let's say, have a Lake Diver on the rear guard that you still have, you move Lake Diver in, you call a new Lake Diver, and now it's a 30k shield. Great. Problem. That means you're out 2 Lake Divers. So that means if you call one, you're not getting 2 more. Excuse me. So that's why this card, mostly you run her as a 2 of, just so you can flip these guys up. But yeah. After that, you got this guy, the wing. So his ability is somewhat similar. I gotta check real quick what's the difference. You have to choose a grade 1 or greater. It can't be a grade 0. You search your deck for a grade for a card with the same unit, and then call to the Guardian Circle, shuffle your deck, and then put them bottom of the deck. So what's good about this one is you go to him when you have that Lake Diver, and you move him in, and you call the new Lake Diver. Yes, it's a lower shield value, but it does go back to the deck, which means you only lose 1 Lake Diver, which was already on the rear guard, and you're fine. So that's why you run him. Normally you would run him as a 2 of. I just run her as a 2 of because she's a nice, I'm going to flip her up no matter what cost. So you flip one of them up, and now you have that choice between greater shield and, if I have those cards I want to have back in the deck. It's just nice for options. So next card in the deck is something that you rarely get to, but you sometimes do, and that's the GB8. This GB8 is extremely good in HYAKKIs. In Yasui's, I saw that it was okay. In HYAKKIs, it's incredible. The cost is literally put 2 cards back to the deck from drop, which is 2 HYAKKIs by this point. Then your 2 rear guards that you call, you have to use the HYAKKI heart that you have. So now you call it 2 HYAKKIs, and they get a skill where when they attack, the attack does not hit, being put in the soul. So, well, not put in the soul, but it's basically if they don't want to let an attack hit from the Vanguard, you just smack on a rear guard. But if they let it hit, then it's whatever. But by this point, they're at least at 4 or 5 damage, so that they have to be banking on that heal, or they better be praying that we don't get a stand or a crit. You don't get to them very often because not any other card in the deck flips. You could run other cards that help you get to this faster, but I think the G Guardians, and then just if you get to that point. It's very good. So the next card in the deck we have, and I prefer not running this many, but it's what I have, and that is 3 copies of the HYAKKI. This is the old one. This one came in the Fighters collection? Yes. And his ability is, once a turn, act. You choose one of your units with HYAKKI in its card name, and you put it to the bottom of the deck. And then you search your deck for a unit on the field. You call it, and it gets plus 10k. And then at the end of the turn, does it go to your hand or the bottom? It goes to your hand. So what's good about this card is it helps you go, and if you have extra HYAKKIs in the hand, it gives them purpose. What you do is you have him on Vanguard Circle. You call a HYAKKI. You activate his ability, you put the HYAKKI back to the bottom of the deck, you search for a unit, which is of course your HYAKKI Vanguard, you call one out, gets plus 10k, and it goes back to your hand. So basically, it's a free plus 10. I recommend only running 1 or 2 of him. The reason why I'm running 3 is because I'm missing a card in the deck, and it just costs a lot of money. So this is a cheap deck, but if you want to go for those extra G units, it might spike up the price a little bit. So I'll be showing so we'll go and put that guy up to the side here. So next card in the G zone is 2 copies of this guy. So this guy is almost similar to your what am I thinking for? Your finisher. So his ability is basically when a unit, if you have 2 or more of it, I believe is, yes. So whenever a unit's placed on the rearguard circle, if there's at least 1 copy other than it, so let's say you have 1 copy of it and then you place another copy of it, the card that you called gets plus 2k and it gets the ability can attack from the back row. So this is one of those cards where if you have a ton of HYAKKIs in your hand, he helps. Yes, you don't get them all back to the bottom of the deck, but it just really is. It's free, it's cheap. I would rather run him as a 1-of, and then I'd replace the other one with this guy for a copy of the Alfred wannabe. I cannot give you the name right now. I'll probably put up some kind of picture of him, and I'll talk about his ability a little bit. So his ability is basically, I don't remember the cost. I think it's Counterblast 1 or Counterblast 2. And you choose a unit that got the same name as your Vanguard, I believe, and it gets drive checks. That's basically what it means. And so what's good about that card, and that's why you change it out for one of this and one of this, is it flips 1, so that means you get closer to the GB8. And if you give the ability of the drive checks to a grade 3, it lets you have twin drive, which means you basically get Alfred. So it makes you get those it gets you 5 cards in hand, and it goes and just gets more triggers, more triggers, more triggers. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I'd rather run it than these two, but it's, I think, like $8 to $12 a card, so I'm a poor man. So that's why I don't run it. So next card in the deck is the finisher. 3 copies of this beautiful man right here. His cost is very, very cheap. I mean, it's Soul Blast, Counterblast, discard. It might sound expensive, but in reality, it's not, because you're going to have the Counterblast, you're going to have the Soul, and then withdraw triggers, and then everything else, you're probably going to have at least a card in hand. So his ability is when you activate the skill, you call 5 HYAKKIs from the deck, and GB3, they all get the ability, this unit can attack from the back row, and at the end of turn, they all go to the bottom of the deck. So, very, very good card. This is your finisher. This is what you want to do. You want to go and ride to him and have 5 HYAKKIs, or maybe at least you want to have a minimum of 3 that you can call in the back row to go and get the attack from the back, and then maybe call 2. The problem with this card is it doesn't give them any power. So if you have a 13k base, or if you get a defense trigger, this guy shuts down fast. So the first time you go into them, you're hoping that they have, just like that minimal amount. But I mean, it's better to go and wear down your opponent's hand with 5 attacks of a 5k shield than 3 attacks of a 10k shield, because of the fact of it's just different cards, and by that time you're getting rid of important grade 2s, maybe important grade 1s, or you're wasting 10k shields. So, or they're just going to bank on that defense draw. I see that you can run this as a 2 of. I run it as a 3 of, just because of the fact of you can go into this the first time they get the defense trigger. Go into the second time, it wasn't enough. You gotta go into it a third time. So, not many of the cards in this G-Zone flip. The last card we got right here is the 2 copies of Yasui-Goma. This is that card you go to if you don't have, it's your first stride if you don't have a HYAKKI in your hand. If you have the HYAKKI in your hand, you're going to want to go to that other one. But this one's really nice because it gives you a 15k rear guard. I mean, it also gets you the GB2, which helps you get to the GB8 faster, but in most situations, it's mostly just for that second one. So, that's the HYAKKI deck profile. If you have any questions or any comments, leave them in the comments below. Surprising. And I apologize for my cold, and I believe that's everything. So, see you guys in the next video. Bye.